I'm Tyler Fertel here, joined by my very, very good friend Ezra Frech, who's also a Paralympian as well. Ezra, I'm very glad to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me, brother. I'm excited.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. We'll get started here with basically the beginning of your childhood. You were born into a situation where you immediately needed some medical attention. And the doctors performed some operations in the years after you were born and even in the days after you were born. So why don't you tell us about that kind of the first years of your life and the disability you have currently?
Yeah, for sure. I was essentially born with one finger on my left hand, and I had a lower left leg that was curved in towards my waist. At 2.5 years old, I had a surgery, and the doctors removed the curved part of my left leg. And then the cool thing about this surgery was they removed the curved part of my left leg, and then they transplanted the big toe and put it onto my left hand. So I essentially went from having one finger on my left hand. I couldn't pick things up. I couldn't hold things to two fingers, right? You can pick things up. You can hold things beyond that. Before the surgery, everything was held against my chest. And then as far as amputation goes, this amputation was really phenomenal because it's hard to mold these prosthetics around a leg that's curved up towards your waist. And as I were to keep growing, the leg would continue to grow and it'd make it almost impossible to walk. And so we removed that whole curved part, just left the stump. And that whole surgery was unbelievably transformational. It was 15 hours under a microscope connecting, nerves, tendons, arteries smaller than the width of a hair. So the surgery was very important. And well, I'm very grateful that we had that surgery in the first place. But I had another surgery a little bit later on in an attempt to regain some of the motor function in my left hand, and help the finger bend in a specific way. And the surgery ended up not going very well. It wasn't a success the way the first one was. But ultimately, that first surgery was the most important and is the reason that I'm able to be mobile today. So.
And obviously, that all of that is something very, very heavy to talk about to a child. So, when you were younger, when did you kind of realize, or when were you told that you were different in a way? And who did that come from? Obviously, it could have come from your parents, doctors, grandparents. Who was it?
Yeah, I think my parents remember, my mom remembers a specific moment where I like looked at her and I looked at my leg and I like realized that I was different when I was very, very young. I think I was in like a one of those playpens. I don't remember the first time I was able to recognize that I was different. I know that growing up after the surgery, there was periods of time where I would cry to my parents and say, "Where is my leg? Where is my," all stuff like that. So I had always known it from a young age. But I think that first moment was I was in a playpen and my mom was looking at me and I looked at her and I looked at my leg. This is before the surgery, and I looked back at her and I was like confused because when I stood up in the playpen, I'm obviously standing on one leg. And she remembers that moment pretty vividly and sort of cues that as the moment that I realized that I was different essentially.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, growing up,
I'm gonna close the door one sec. All right, continue.
um, obviously growing up, you've given a bunch of speeches about your situation. We've obviously had a bunch of conversations, the two of us as well. And I've always heard this idea of why me that you've talked about. And then in response, you kind of have this reaction of your disability being something that you have to embrace because you can't change it. So where did this mindset come from for you, and what prompted you to create this mentality for yourself?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think of course growing up there were plenty of difficult times and hardships and moments where I was sulking, right? I felt sorry for myself. I felt that why me? I felt like why was I chosen to be the only person that I knew with the disability and all this stuff? And it wasn't a specific moment that I came to this realization, but over time, I just began to realize that I was born this way, right? I can't change my disability. I can't change the situation I'm in. I have absolutely no control over it. And so there was almost no point and sulking and the sadness and feeling sorry for myself when I literally have no control over. I might as well just make the most out of my life. And so it was years and years of slowly coming to that realization. But eventually I reached a point where I was like, I'm just going to make the most out of my life. I'm not going to sit here and feel sorry for myself.
Mm-hmm. And a big thing for you has always been sports. You've played from my first memories of you. I mean, you've played so many sports: basketball, football, even soccer, track and field. Obviously now, at the lower school, at the Brownwood Lower School, you played sports in all three sections of the year that we had. And so sport has been always something very important to you, and we've always connected over that. So it may seem like a basic question, but I know it has a meaningful answer for you. What do you feel like sports has really done for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think on a grassroots level, the reason sports has been such a big part of my life is because everywhere you go with a physical disability, you don't really feel like you belong, right? The store, the mall, the park, it doesn't matter. People are always staring, people are always pointing fingers, people are always whispering. You're almost like a zoo animal in some situations, being always looked at. And so sports was a place where I could go where I wasn't just I labeled as the kid with a disability. My identity wasn't forced upon me as just, oh, the kid with a disability. I wasn't stared at all the time. I wasn't People weren't pointing fingers and whispering about my disability. And even if they were, I wasn't thinking about it because I was just one of the guys. It gave me an escape from this identity of always being the kid with a disability, the person everyone's like whispering, pointing fingers, all that stuff. And as well, I mean, I've been underestimated my whole life. And so sports gave me an opportunity to prove people wrong, right? Disprove these preconceived notions that people had regarding my disability, regarding a kid with one leg. And that always sort of lit a fire in me. And so then you couple that with a kid who's naturally competitive, naturally athletic, and that just fueled the fire of what my love was for sports growing up. And then I still compete for the same reasons. I still compete for the same feeling that I get when I stepped on the basketball court 10 years ago, and the same feeling that I feel when I step on the track nowadays. And so it's that idea of having an escape from the sort of daunting reality that we live in when you live with a physical disability. And then as well, this opportunity to prove people wrong and change the misconceptions regarding what people think is possible with a physical disability.
Mm-hmm. And was this kind of realization for you in a way that sports was really this outlet for you to kind of feel and act like everyone else around you because it was such a great place to hang out with your friends, your teammates, whoever it was? Was this kind of the origin of Angel City Sports, you'd say, in a way? Obviously, it's an organization that I am very, very proud to be a part of as well, that you and your dad founded together. Um, is kind of this the power of sports something that really fueled the creation of Angel City Sports?
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was. I mean, what fueled the creation of Angel City Sports originally was that we were having to fly all the way across the country for adaptive sports opportunities. And I was a firsthand example of the power of sports. And we knew that sports has the power to transform lives. I mean, what it does for you physically, psychologically, what it does for your soul. And we knew that we had to bring adaptive sports, we had to bring sports opportunities to all people with physical disabilities. And then we just started obviously in the Los Angeles area because that's where we live. That was local. But the power of sport that I felt growing up, that my parents were able to bear witness to, that is definitely the driving factor behind what we do at Angel City Sports. Because really, we provide sports opportunities, right, for people with physical disabilities. But it goes beyond that, and we use sport almost as a tool to just overall benefit people's lives and bring the community together. Because there is nothing like the power of sport. And you're completely right that I was just the case one, right? The first study patient of physical proof of the power of sport. And then we just took that model essentially and just expanded it to as many people with disabilities as we could.
Mm-hmm. And kind of expanding more on this, you've always been extremely dedicated to your craft with sports. I mean, you've gone from focusing on basketball to now obviously being a Paralympian in track and field. So, for those athletes looking at you and admiring your work, what we see on the outside on social media and everything is obviously your hard work and discipline specifically. But I know that there are also some tough days too, days when you don't perform to your own standards or are even stopped or are even forced to stop due to having an injury. So what have you done in those dark moments to kind of keep yourself going, to keep yourself moving? And obviously, and it ended up with you making the 2020 Paralympic team and obviously being one of the faces of the Paralympic Games going down the road.
Yeah, I honestly, it's tough. There's no real easy answer to how you get through the dark times with training and injuries and all that stuff. I think oftentimes people say, I've heard people say you don't want to have super ambitious goals or these things that we call North Star goals, right? They're goals that are unbelievably ambitious, seemingly crazy, seemingly impossible. And for me, the only reason I have been able to get through any dark moments in training, any times I didn't want to train, any injuries, any times where my mental health was compromised, my mental sanity was compromised because I was so obsessed with this goal and this vision that I had, the only thing that gets me through these tough times are my goals, right? Is how much I care, how much I believe, and how much I visualize and think about these things that haven't even happened yet. It's those North Star goals, those impossible goals, those overly ambitious goals, those unrealistic goals. Those are the things that get me and pull me through these dark periods, these injuries, these ups, the downs, the highs, the lows, the emotional feelings, everything. And so people oftentimes undervalue the importance of having these ambitious goals and having these North Star goals. But quite frankly, it is because of those visions, those dreams that I have that gets me up in the morning, gets me to do things that oftentimes I don't want to do. At the end of the day, right, how I feel has no influence on what I train and how I train in a specific day. I just do it. If I feel crappy, if I don't feel like training, if I'm sad, if I'm this, it doesn't matter. I get the work done. And it's because I have such a perfect visual of what I want to accomplish that it helps drag me through those days where I don't feel like it and helps drag me through these injury moments and helps drag me through those times where things are all going wrong and I'm not performing well. And so if I had to give one piece of advice to people who have these big dreams and are going through the ups and downs and the this and that and the emotional, whatever it might be, it's to think of the dream. Think of the reason you started. Think of the goal that's in the back of your mind that keeps you up at night, right? The thing that gets you up early in the morning, the thing that you're daydreaming in class about. Those things will help pull you through these darker periods. And that's exactly what it's done for me. And it does the same for anyone else who has that clear image of what they want to attain.
Yeah, and obviously your first main goal was making the Tokyo Paralympics, and you were successfully able to do that. Now you're moving on to those goals of potentially medaling, of potentially gold medaling, of having this overall big impact on the Paralympic and Olympic process overall. What would you say is your overarching goal for your career?
The overarching goal for my career is to normalize disability on a global scale and show people what's possible as an amputee. Period, right? To inspire to inspire people across the world to go after their impossible dreams, right? Yeah, that's probably it, right? So my overarching goal is to normalize disability and inspire people globally to go after their impossible dream, right? And how do you do that, right? What is the exemplification of that dream? And I believe that it is to go down as the greatest Paralympian of all time. Etch my name in the history books, do things nobody's ever done, and I think that revolves around pulling something off, which I consider the Triple Crown, which is a gold in the high jump, a gold in the long jump, and a gold in the 100 meter. And I plan to pull this off at the LA 28 Paralympic Games. Now this accomplishment has never been done before, ever. There's been Olympians who have tried, Paralympians for hundreds of years. Nobody's been able to do this. People have won gold in the high jump and the long jump, but not the 100 meter as well. People have won gold in the long jump and the 100 meter, but not the high jump. No one's done all three. And so it is accomplishments like this that wake me up in the morning, get me through those dark periods, and keep me driven because it's so ambitious, it's so impossible, it's so unrealistic, and it's so crazy that I feel like I just might do it. And so that is, I think, the literal goal of my career is to win that and then keep winning it and keep pushing those boundaries. But then by doing that, I believe I want to just normalize disability on a global scale and then show people what's possible. If I can go out and accomplish the impossible in LA in 2028, in my hometown, my home city, in front of thousands of family and friends, then who knows, that might inspire some other kid to go after that impossible goal that he doesn't think he'll be able to accomplish it until he gets inspired by hopefully what I do. So that's the thought process. But if I had to pick like a number one goal, that's what it would be.
We're quoting that answer here. We're going to come back to that in the summer of 2028 when the games.
Yeah,
we're taking a picture and we'll come back to that in 5 years, 6 years. So. Yeah, that's a
We'll come back. We'll look back on this the night when I step off the podium for the final time in LA 2028, and we'll say, "Damn, he really said he was going to win a gold in all three, and sure enough, he did it." You know what I mean? That's what we'll be saying. Hopefully,
he knew it. He knew it from the start. All right, so. Kind of moving on, obviously, greatness is your goal. That is very, very clear. And obviously, aside from constantly physically training, there's a lot of stuff you have to do off the track, off the high jump pit, off the long jump pit to really help yourself and put yourself in the best position possible to succeed. So I know you do some visualization on the side. Can you tell us more about what you do outside of really physically training for track and field that helps prepare you for the biggest moments?
Yeah, for sure. Track and field is an interesting sport, right? Because unlike basketball or soccer, I can't just run and jump all day. I would injure my body. I would destroy my body. I can't shoot threes all day like Steph Curry or these guys who train 8 hours. I can't do that. I wish I could, but I can't. It's would end up being a negative, and I would just injure myself. So I say this all the time. Being on the track is the easy part of training. When you're there and you're on the track and they give you the workout, that's the easy part. The hard part is optimizing every other aspect of your life, right, to benefit the work you do on the track. And so that includes proper recovery, proper sleep, proper visualization, meditation, staying away from junk food, eating really well. There's a million aspects regarding this, eliminating drama out of my life so I'm not constantly in a mental ups and downs about all stuff like that. But ultimately, what it comes down to is I strongly believe in the law of attraction, and I strongly believe in the idea of manifestation. And so in my head, almost 12 hours a day, every hour that I'm awake, I am sitting there replaying myself winning world championships this summer and winning the Paralympics one day and winning the Triple Crown in LA in 2028. And so I sit there and I literally just think over and over, and I visualize over and over and over. And I've ultimately, like, the way I speak to myself, I don't speak to myself as like, I will become the world champion one day. When I'm walking through the day, when I do training sessions, when I'm recovering, when I'm sleeping, when I'm eating, when I'm taking the time to focus on making an optimal life to become the best track athlete that I can, in my head that whole time I'm saying, this is what the world champ does. This is you're the world champ now. Like, this is what I do, right? I know when I step on the track in Paris or LA or Brisbane, I can look these dudes that I'm competing against in the eye with supreme confidence because I believe in myself so heavily, right? I can't be scared looking at these guys. I can't be like, oh, wow, he looks like he's really strong. I can't have any of that, no doubt, right? But it doesn't just happen. No one's going to accomplish their dreams just from sitting there visualizing all the time. There has to be the opposite end of the spectrum, which is actually working hard. So I have goals of winning this and winning that, and I plan to do all of that. But that at the end of the day, my number one goal in training is to do everything I possibly can, right? Leave no stone unturned leading up to any competition, because then, regardless of if I win or I lose or whatever the hell happens, there was nothing I would have done differently. I gave it my all. And so these two sides of my mental training and my mental thought process leading up to any competition is, yeah, I want to believe I'm the best in the world on this side. And the other side is, I'm like, I'm not the best in the world yet. I got to grind, 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 do everything I can, and then walk onto the track with confidence. And so that's sort of how I balance it out.
Mhm. To continue on this, I guess, idea of balance, obviously you have to balance the mental and physical aspects of your events and of your training, but you also have to balance kind of your schoolwork, your social life, your athletic kind of commitments and everything. So obviously there are a lot of student athletes out there, little with the aspirations that you have. But what is some advice you have for people that are also balancing school, balancing their sport, balancing their social life in critical times and important times when all of it is important?
Yeah, I think one piece of advice I would have is learn not to procrastinate, because at some point there is so little free time that I have, that if I'm not optimal with it, if I'm not doing something productive with it, then I just get thrown to the fire essentially. And I believe to a certain degree that finding a perfect balance is not always the best situation, because I know that if I want to accomplish anything great in one specific sector, balancing is not always going to be possible. I'm not going to have a perfect balance. And accepting that, yeah, I'll miss a homework assignment here or there. Yeah, training takes over parts of my life. I miss school here, I miss school there. Accepting that balance is, you're not going to get it perfect every single time, is a huge step in the right direction, because then you learn how to recover from these situations. You learn how to rebound. You learn how to do things differently. But the first step is, right, first of all, you got to be disciplined and not procrastinate. And then the second thing is, it's okay if you screw up, and you're not going to have perfect balance at all times. But all you can really do is do your best and then just roll with the punches. So,
Mhm. And obviously relating to this idea of rolling off the punches, of just going as things happen. Paris 2024 is next year, and obviously you're a college senior. I mean, you're a high school senior. You're now looking at colleges and everything. And last year you were hurt, and unfortunately, I mean, that didn't allow you to. I think it was hit the college standard that you needed to compete next year, right? So, I mean, you just had to roll with that. You had to understand that this injury it was very, very unfortunate that it's not allowing you to compete in college sports next year. But at the same time, it allows you to have a gap year where you can focus on Paris 2024 and focus on getting on that podium. So, what is really your plan for the next couple of years in order to give yourself the best opportunities for both getting on the podium in Paris and also keeping this idea of competing and going to college?
yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, unfortunately, I got injured last year, and I wasn't able to hit the standards that I needed to get some Division 1 offers. But thankfully, I'm going to be taking that gap year, right? And I get this time back. I get that whole season back essentially. Where now this year, the plan is to perform well, prepare for World Championships, which is this July, July of 2023, and then in the process of that, hopefully receive some Division 1 offers. And then once I do that, I will be taking the full gap year to spend all of my energy and focus training for Paris in 2024. I won't have to balance school and all that stuff. Like that won't be in at school for 8 hours a day, and I won't have homework to do. It'll be a complete and full focus on training and preparing. And then as well, we will be doing things on the business side to help further my career in the entertainment world and the social media, the content lens, and then potentially taking up maybe some acting or modeling here or there. So it'll allow for a full focus on my career in and outside of sport, and not having to worry about juggling all these different plates and holding everything up, whether that be school and social life and a million other things. So the gap year will be very nice, but then I'll just be applying during the gap year next year instead of applying now and then deferring the admissions.
All right. And so continuing on a little bit more with that, obviously we're talking about Paris, we're talking about the 2032 games, which are going to be on another side of the world. And then obviously 2028 games are very fortunately coming to LA. But obviously, I mean, you're going to Paris like now, or like by the time this podcast come out, you'll be in Paris. You went to Thailand a couple weeks ago. You travel all these different places for media stuff, and also events and competitions and everything. So a little bit of a fun question here, and it might be a very, very tough one. What is your favorite place you have ever traveled, for anything?
Favorite place I've ever traveled for anything?
It's tough. I know.
I think I'm going to say Dubai.
Ooh.
I think I'm going to say Dubai. I had an unbelievable experience there, and everything was so nice, and it was so beautiful, and everything was so fancy, and we went out in the desert and went sandboarding and ATV riding, and it was one of the most magical days ever in Dubai. Or Dubai or Peru. Peru was phenomenal. Uh, Switzerland was really nice. Dude, I don't even know. Probably either Dubai or Peru if I had to pick. Dubai or Peru.
There's Ezra Frech, traveling advice for anyone listening right now. Dubai or Peru are the places to hit.
Yeah, go to Dubai or Peru. Yeah.
Keep that in mind. Keep that in
Yeah.
mind. And as we kind of close out this interview, I want to kind of go to another fun question, one that really made everyone you knew and even people all around the world really, really interested and proud, was that you got the opportunity to go on to the Ellen Show back all the way in 2014, and then also this past year in 2022. So just watching the show and everything, and I mean, I was even like nervous watching it as one of your friends, but like just how nerve-wracking is that, just knowing that you're sitting there just in front of millions of people? I mean, was the one last year that you did, I mean, was that Hunter like last season? I mean, it's a lot of eyes on you at that moment. I mean, I couldn't even think about how many people were watching that. I mean, it's scary for me to think about, but how nerve-wracking was that experience for you? And what was kind of also the process of getting yourself on that show?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't mean to come across in a way that sounds arrogant or like I'm very stuck up or cocky in this, but I really don't get nervous for stuff like that. I've been sort of giving speeches like that my whole life. Since I was about 4 years old, I've just been sharing my story. And so I wasn't super nervous. And the good thing is like I'm in control, right? I'm very calculated and careful with what I say. Of course, somehow I could have said something really horrible accidentally and then gotten like canceled, or I don't know. But I wasn't really worried about that. I was pretty confident with what I was saying. And I knew like she's not asking me like crazy hard ethical dilemma questions. Like these are just sort of, this is me. This is who I am. I've been sharing my story my whole life. Now I'm just doing the same thing. Just more people are watching. And so going on the Ellen Show the very first time, I was a little nervous because I was just younger. I was like 9 years old. And but once I walked out there, it went away. I was more comfortable. And so I've just been doing media stuff like that for so long that it becomes second nature to a certain point where I talk about this stuff so frequently, and I think about my goals and everything so frequently that it's not that difficult to just have a conversation about it. 'Cause that's what it is, right? At the end of the day, it's just having a conversation. Now, granted, there was a long process of my agent talking to them and scheduling the time and this, and my publicist talking and this and that. There's a million things that went on to build up to that point. But at the end of the day, it's just two people talking, and I love talking. I love, meeting people. I love having conversations, and Ellen's a great conversationalist, so it was an easy conversation.
Mm-hmm. So Ezra, this was a very, very fun conversation. Definitely got to learn more about your experience. experiences. I'm glad you got to share everything with the outside audience who as well. So once again, thank you very, very much for coming on. This was fun.
Thank you, brother, for having me. This is a great conversation, and I'm sure we'll do more in the future. Huh?
Of course.
We'll keep it going for sure.
Yeah, after the 20, I can guarantee after the 2028 Paralympics in LA, when you hit that triple crown, another one of these will be happening. So that's good.
Yeah, you better clip this. You better clip this podcast when I say I'm going to win it, and then we'll stitch it together when I hopefully do.
Oh, of course, of course. That will definitely be happening. All right. Thank you for coming on once again.
Awesome. Awesome, brother.